Hello everybody, my name is Nathan and welcome back to another video. A couple days ago an article came out on AP News and this was just something I also wanted to talk about, is the current SNAP benefits being suspended for the government shutdown. U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani told lawyers that if the government can't afford to cover the cost, there's a process to follow rather than simply suspending all benefits. The steps involve finding an equitable way of reducing benefits and basically what they're saying is, since the government's shut down, the Republicans are trying to just pause and end SNAP benefits for, if I'm correct, the first time in the food aid program's history. And if you don't have money, you tighten your belt. You're not going to make everyone drop dead because it's a political game someplace, which is a fair point. Something like SNAP benefits, people are going to starve. People are not going to have money for food, basically. And, it's akin to people losing their health care. Other lawsuits have been filed over the program suspension, including one filed Thursday in Rhode Island by a coalition of 8 cities and communities, business, and union organizations. SNAP, which costs about $8 billion per month, serves about 1 in 8 Americans and is a major piece of the nation's social safety net. So this would basically mean that 1 in 8 Americans would potentially not be able to afford dinner for them and their family, or breakfast, or you name it, any kind of food. They wouldn't be able to afford that, and they're going to go hungry. And the argument from Trump's administration said that it wasn't allowed to use a contingency fund with about $5 billion in it for the program, which reversed a USDA plan from before the shutdown and said that the money would be tapped to keep SNAP running. And so basically they're saying, no, this is not a big enough emergency to use this money from this fund, even though, in the words of, I forget the name, I just heard it on the news the other day, they basically said, this is an emergency if I've ever seen one. A complete pause and suspension of the SNAP system is an absolute emergency. Democrats argue that not only could the contingency money be used, but it must be, and they also said a separate fund with about $23 billion could also be tapped into. I think it was Talwani that ended up saying this, because right here I found her quote. "It's hard for me to understand that this is not an emergency when there is no money and a lot of people are needing their SNAP benefits." Which, again, it just, hones in the point that this isn't about, it's none of it's genuine. It's all just a political game. It's just withholding stuff because, they're just playing games. They want what they want, and they are using people's livelihood as basically a bargaining chip. They're holding their livelihoods hostage. The plaintiffs argued in their lawsuit that failing to maintain the SNAP funding would hurt public health, make it harder for children to learn in school, drive up government health care expenditures, and hurt the retailers that rely on SNAP payments. To qualify for SNAP in 2025, a family of 4's net income can't exceed the federal poverty line, which is about $31,000 a year. And last year, SNAP provided assistance to 41 million people, nearly 2/3 of whom were families with children, according to the lawsuit. And this is where, the argument comes in that it's like, oh, if you don't make enough money, why should I have to pay for your stuff? And you have to think about where your money comes from. If you are a shareholder, a business owner, even somebody who's highly educated and works in a some kind of field of business or engineering or something, the people that can't manage their money are the people driving these industries. It's like a giant pyramid. You've got the people at the top, the shareholders, and you've got, the important research people, designers, patent holders, and all those kinds of people. But it's all built at the bottom of people spending their money on these kind of products, time and time again. It's a trickle down effect kind of, and a trickle up. So when you have a certain amount of resources in a society, not everybody can have equal stuff. So, we end up in this system where you have a lot of people at the top that make a lot, and then it just slowly kind of is fading into more people making less and slightly more people making more, and the middle is being phased out, which, it sucks. And it's just one of those things, though, that, most, an engineer or somebody who owns a patent can only get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars if people buy the product. And people buying that product, on the one hand, you did earn that business, but on the other hand, people spending their money on things like that is like consumer goods, consumers spending their money is what ends up driving business. And so you can't really manage your money without, having a higher income. And there's also, elastic goods and inelastic goods. There's items that don't really change the cost. You're going to use those things all the time, like electricity, water, heating, natural gas. But anyways, the elastic goods are things like certain meal types. You're going to eat healthier and eat more meals with more protein and things that are better for you. You're going to start, spending more money on transportation it's just elastic versus inelastic goods. And being able to manage your money and save your money is one part. But at the end of the day, there are goods that we need to consume that are made by people that get paid more. And so, it's ultimately those people at the bottom that fuel these industries. And so the more people that save their money, the more businesses fail, and the harder it is to make a business. But yeah, overall, I think this is just completely ridiculous and should be completely illegal. There's always just a legal kind of gray area with this stuff, because it's just down to people arguing over it, saying that it's not. We should be allowed to tap from this fund that's set aside for certain emergencies, which is exactly what the reason why it was made for. But yeah, we can do nothing but hope, that we can pull some kind of argument around and convince people to vote to restore SNAP benefits, because there's a lot of people that just don't give a shit. They think, why should you get SNAP benefits? Why should I have to pay for your food? Which on the one hand, I get that argument, but on the other hand, like I said, the people's food that you're paying for are ultimately big contributors to the economy. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment. Feedback's always welcome here. I appreciate all kinds of feedback. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.